So the process that you'll use to link to a GitHub account, right, is you're going to go in here and you're going to tell it, I want to create a new repository. So if you've got your GitHub account, just go to GitHub and you should have this button sort of showing up right here. Then you'll give it a name and probably just make it public, but you don't want to initialize it with anything. So I called mine Survive.js just so that I knew what I was doing. You can call it whatever you want to call your repository, you know, React class or something else. And once you click Create Repository, it'll take you over to this page right here. So it'll tell you quick setup, like, oh, if you've done this before, here's what you can do. But it'll also give you some steps, like if you want to push an existing repository from the command line, here's how you can do that. Now, what I recommend on this for most people, unless you want to set up an SSH process, which is easier when you're continually pushing, but it takes a little more, like, get set up, is I recommend doing the HTTPS configuration because that one just works a little easier. It's something that won't give you as many problems. So you've got sort of this toggle here to change between them, and I recommend trying the HTTPS setting unless you want. I can talk a little bit about what the differences are later, but I set this one up for HTTPS. I'm going to figure out how to do SSH in Cloud9. I just haven't gotten it working yet, and then maybe I'll give a quick tutorial on how to do that for people who are interested in that path. But what it'll give you is this, or push an existing repository from the command line, and that's what we want to do because we've already created a Git repository for our project. So then we'll just sort of copy this line, git remote add origin, and this one will be unique for yours because this path here is whatever your repository is that you created on GitHub. And then we'll run the line git push -u origin master. And that's, the first line is saying, here's my remote. And the second one is saying, push my master branch to my origin remote repository, right? So it's saying, push it up there. So what'll happen when you do that is git push -u origin master. Now I've already done this. But it will tell you, okay, well, first I need your username. And this is because we did the HTTPS setup. So give me your GitHub username. And then it'll ask you for your password. And let me pull mine real fast. And then what it'll do is push your changes in all of your commits on your master branch that you've made up until that point up into GitHub. So then if you go look at GitHub after you've done that, what you'll be able to see is, here's my project. Oh, it includes this README, which, look, it nicely formats it even to help you out. Like, that's what it can do with the markdown file, is GitHub will show those with formatting. Here's all of my files up there on GitHub. And it even shows my commits. I can click up here and see in a much easier, nicer interface what has changed in my commits. I did an initial commit, I changed my hello message, I changed it again. And I'm not gonna walk through all the details of what GitHub provides, but you can play around in the interface. You can see things like if I click on this, it'll show you what changed in this commit. The minus is saying this is what the line was before, and the plus is saying here's what that line was afterwards. Like, here's the one where I fixed the broken thing, and so you can see I added the slash back in. So GitHub's got a really nice interface for seeing a lot of this information, and you may end up just preferring it in terms of the way you view a lot of that over looking at the command line. But the biggest value we're getting out of setting this up is not only do we have npm start that we're able to run in order to run our code and test while we're doing development, but it gave us several other npm commands. And two of the critical ones are npm run build and npm run deploy. So if we do this npm run build command, and I'm going to stop my continuous process here, and I'll run this, npm run build, what you'll see is it creates the build folder in your project. So it just deleted mine because I'd already run this once. And that build folder has built versions of all of your code. So it's not going to be stuff that you're going to be able to read very easily. Like the index.html, sure, you can look at that. But a lot of these other files, they're not going to be something you can just read. Like, what's this style file? Oh, I have no idea what that is. I can't read that. This manifest, this app file. This is what your code ends up being when it runs in the browser. It turns it into this code instead of what you typed in that React file. So it's something that's really not very readable, right? But it allows it to run directly in the browser. So now that if you've done that npm run build and you're at that point, the really cool part next is you can do npm run deploy. And it does mention deploys the contents of build to the GitHub pages branch of your project and pushes it to GitHub. You can access the project, and we'll get there in a second. Before this can work correctly, you should set public path at webpackconfig.js to match your project name on GitHub. I actually don't even know if I did that. So I don't think I did. I think it sort of worked, but I'm gonna check this. Let me see. So this is saying I should be setting this public path. I don't know if I did. Let me try it again real fast. So I said just deploy, and what it did is it moved it into this GitHub pages. Oops, I need to give it my username and password again. This is the problem with the HTTPS is every time you push to GitHub pretty much, if you've gone more than a couple minutes, you're gonna have to put in your username and password again. That's what SSH lets you get around, because then you never have to type that stuff in again, but you have to do some setup with creating keys and other things. So now it's published. And the documentation here, it's not easy to understand at first, but what it's saying with this is saying your user is your GitHub username, .github.io/project, and that's what your project name for it is on GitHub. So you could go to, I'll just paste that and we'll replace those values for you guys so that you'll understand. My username is just my last name, and then my project name was Survive.js. And now this isn't running on Cloud9 at all. This is running from GitHub pages. So until I do another push up to my GitHub pages, this won't change. But this is a link that isn't dependent on your Cloud9 environment at all. And so you can actually, this is something you can do with anything on GitHub. If you're just running client-side code, if you're not writing any server-side, you can host your pages on GitHub for that client-side code just by using this GH pages branch inside of your repository. But that's one of the really cool things that's already sort of set up for this project for you. So while you're working on this project, if you want to be able to show your stuff to somebody else without having to send them to your Cloud9 page or something like that, you can push it up to your GitHub Pages profile and show this all of your code running. Is there any questions about that? Any clarifications people feel like we need? Probably going to stop this recording so that it's a short, focused video for anybody who wants to go through this again. So if anybody has something that think would be really useful to capture on this, we'll get it in before we end that.